All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. We are looking at what honestly might be the ultimate perfect crime. It's the case that literally permanently changed aviation security. Like, it is the entire reason we have the universal baggage checks and metal detectors that we consider totally normal today. And, wild enough, it remains officially unsolved over 50 years later. We are, of course, talking about the D.B. Cooper mystery, the only unsolved skyjacking in American history. It's a story with so many crazy twists, it honestly feels like a Hollywood movie script. But every single detail we're going to cover today, 100% real.
So, the big question we've got to grapple with right out of the gate is this. How exactly did one man hijack a commercial flight, steal $200,000, and then just vanish into the darkness? Seriously, take a second and consider the sheer impossibility of pulling off such an audacious crime and then disappearing into thin air without leaving a single confirmed identity behind. It completely defies logic. Let's break down exactly how we pulled it off.
Section 1. The perfect disappearance.
Picture this. It's late afternoon in Portland, Oregon. It is dark, it's freezing, and it's raining heavily. And right in the middle of this gloomy weather, this perfectly ordinary-looking guy in a sharp black business suit, a white shirt, a black clip-on tie, and dark sunglasses just strolls right up to the counter. The date is November 24, 1971. His demeanor? Incredibly calm. He says his name is Dan Cooper, and he buys a one-way ticket for Northwest Orient Flight 305 up to Seattle. And he pays in cash. Oh, and he checks zero luggage. He's carrying absolutely nothing except a single black briefcase. Obviously, no one in that busy airport had any clue they were looking at a man about to kick off one of America's greatest mysteries.
Section 2. A bomb and a briefcase.
The timeline of that afternoon builds with this really quiet tension. Flight 305 is a Boeing 727, and the boarding process is, well, remarkably normal. Cooper grabs seat 18C near the back of the aircraft, sitting right there alongside 36 totally unaware passengers and 6 crew members. So at 2 p.m., he enters the airport. Once he's on board, he's just acting like your typical businessman, unwinding before a flight. He orders a bourbon and soda, he's quietly smoking a few cigarettes, just kind of taking in the room. Then, shortly after takeoff, he makes his first move. He calmly hands a folded, handwritten note to Flight Attendant Florence Schaffner. Now first, Florence just thinks he's another passenger trying to flirt, right? So she just slips the note into her purse without even reading it.
And that is exactly when the whole vibe of the flight flips on its head. Cooper leans in a bit closer to her. He doesn't yell, he doesn't make a scene. His voice is just completely, chillingly calm. He tells her, "Miss, you'd better read that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner carefully opens his briefcase, and inside, she gets this terrifying look at what seems to be 8 red cylinders wired up to a battery. Now, whether it was a real explosive, or actually, scratch that, real or fake, we still don't know for sure. But let me tell you, in that terrifying moment, she bought every single second of it.
His demands were just as chilling as they were specific. Step 1, $200,000 in cash. Step 2, 4 parachutes. Step 3, have a fuel truck waiting on the tarmac up in Seattle. And you know what makes this so unsettling? It's how politely and clearly he laid it all out. He never raised his voice. He never made unnecessary threats to anyone. Honestly, his utter calmness just made him that much more terrifying to the crew. Meanwhile, up in the cockpit, the pilots get the shocking news and are frantically radioing air traffic control, the local cops, and the FBI.
Section 3. The ransom and release.
So while the authorities are totally scrambling down on the ground, Flight 305 gets stuck in his agonizing 2-hour holding pattern up in the air. The FBI and airline officials desperately needed that time to scrape together the ransom and source the parachutes. When the plane finally touches down safely at a dark, rainy Seattle-Tacoma airport, authorities hand over the massive ransom, $200,000, entirely in $20 bills. Just imagine the sheer volume of cash that is. And this is where Cooper proves he's a man of his word. Once the cash and the chutes are brought on board, he lets all 36 passengers go. And get this, the vast majority of them had absolutely no idea they were even in the middle of a hijacking. They just walked across the wet runway thinking it was a normal delay. But for the remaining crew, the pilots, a flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant, the nightmare was just getting started. Cooper orders them to prep the plane for a second flight, this time aiming for Mexico City.
This is where Cooper gives these incredibly specific, almost bizarre aviation instructions for the next leg of the journey. He tells the pilots, fly at a low altitude. Keep the speed super slow. Leave the landing gear partially deployed. And the biggest one, keep the passenger cabin unpressurized. The crew doesn't even argue. They follow every single rule he lays out. They take off once again into the pitch-black, stormy night, totally in the dark about what he's actually planning to do.
Section 4. The Midnight Jump.
Right after takeoff, Cooper tells the lone remaining flight attendant to head forward into the cockpit. She asks if he needs anything, and he just politely says, no. Imagine the sheer sensory overload of this scene. You've got violent winds, heavy rain, and Cooper is completely alone back there in the unmonitored rear passenger cabin. Just dim cabin lights, no cameras, no witnesses. Then, right around 8 p.m., something really unique happens. You see, the Boeing 727 had this very unusual feature for a commercial jet, a lowerable rear staircase. Up in the cockpit, the crew sees the warning lights start flashing. The rear staircase has been dropped mid-flight. The plane suddenly shifts a bit in the air, and the captain instantly knows exactly what just went down. The hijacker just made his final move.
You really have to stop and consider the impossible reality of these jump conditions. We are talking freezing temperatures, whipping winds, complete pitch-black darkness, and the dense, totally unforgiving forests of the Pacific Northwest waiting below. Imagine Dan Cooper stepping into that freezing, stormy void, just plunging into the night sky with $200,000 in ransom cash physically strapped to his body. It is, without a doubt, one of the boldest, most shocking escapes in all of criminal history. When the plane finally landed later that night, he was completely gone.
Section 5. The Largest Manhunt.
By sunrise on November 25th, one of the most massive search operations in American history kicked off. We're talking thousands of FBI agents, military personnel, and local police absolutely swarming the wilderness. You had helicopters flying low over the mud, ground teams hacking through dense forests, all trying to calculate exactly where this guy could have landed. But despite throwing everything they had at it, the lack of evidence was just mind-bogglingly frustrating. Inside the abandoned aircraft cabin, they did find a tiny bit of physical evidence, Cooper's black clip-on tie and a few of his cigarette butts. But out there in the woods, nothing. Absolutely no sign of a parachute, no briefcase, no body. And you've got to remember, this was 1971. DNA technology literally did not exist yet. So all those crucial clues that would break a case wide open today, totally useless back then.
So the case basically goes ice cold for years. But then we get a massive plot twist. In 1980, which is 9 years after the jump, an 8-year-old kid is just playing around digging in the sand on the banks of the Columbia River near a spot called Tennebar, and he uncovers these bundles of decaying $20 bills. The SBI comes in, runs the serial numbers, and bingo, they're a perfect match. To this day, it is the first and only confirmed chunk of the ransom money ever found. But how on earth it ended up buried on that riverbank? Still a massive, massive mystery.
Section 6. An enduring American mystery. Finding that cash at Tina Bar totally breathed new life into the case for a minute, but the sheer scale of the investigation ultimately just led to a wall of frustration. Let's look at the numbers. Suspects examined? Hundreds. Confirmed matches? 0. After more than 4 decades of chasing dead ends, the FBI made a pretty chilling announcement in 2016. They were officially ceasing active pursuit of the D.B. Cooper case so they could focus their resources on other things. The file was basically stamped unsolved and shoved onto a shelf pending any highly credible new evidence ever popping up.
Since we still have no definitive answer, 2 dominant theories have really taken hold over the decades. On one side, you've got the highly trained paratrooper theory. This is the idea that Cooper was some calculated military expert who planned every single atmospheric and mechanical detail to absolute perfection, and actually pulled it off and escaped. On the flip side is the reckless amateur theory. This suggests he was just a desperate guy who vastly underestimated that freezing storm, jumped with limited gear, and fell to his inevitable death. But as an explainer of the facts here, I have to point out the most important detail. Neither of these theories has ever been proven.
And that leaves us with one incredibly provocative question. A question that seriously still haunts the FBI today. Who was the man who casually boarded Flight 305, calmly collected $200,000, and then vanished forever into the stormy darkness of the Pacific Northwest? His audacious jump literally gave us modern airport security and permanently changed the way we fly. But the man himself? He just ceased to exist. Did the forest swallow him whole, or did he manage to live out the rest of his days in complete wealthy anonymity? Maybe the answer was lost to the wind that night in 1971, or maybe, just maybe, someone, somewhere out there, still knows the truth. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning what you think you know.